Hey everyone, welcome back to Light Shine Desserts, where you can get your daily dose of baking, the Word of God, decorating, and much, much more. So today I'm going to be showing you the first fail I've ever had with this recipe, which I've only done this recipe like 2 other times, so yeah. So let me go on to say fail number 1, which probably started it all, was this food scale. So I just got a food scale maybe some weeks ago, and I never used a food scale with this recipe because you could use cups if wanted, or you could use the food scale with grams. But every single time it's worked with cups, which was the other 2 times, it's worked out nice, it turned out the way it's supposed to, and it was great. But this time it didn't. It was horrible, it was crunchy, I had to throw everything away, literally. Like, I ate some of the good ones because I was testing them to see are these ones the good ones or not. But yeah. Let me just first off say that if your recipe doesn't say that you specifically need a food scale, or whether it's for macarons or not, I would suggest not using a food scale. If it says that it's best to, because some recipes do say like, oh, you need to, it just works better that way, or it says you can use a food scale or you cannot, whichever one works best for you, I would just say go for it. The other 2 times it's worked, and this time I decided to do a whole bunch of new different things, which I don't even know why. Let me just say these are basic vanilla macarons, and then it had a white chocolate ganache filling. So it took about like 30 minutes because I was doing a timer, kind of like Kids Baking Championship, just because I like doing that sometimes, and I want to see how fast could I do this because I've done this before. But it took so much longer just to even get the almond flour and the powdered sugar because my food scale was just being very wonky. I think maybe because it was low battery, or I don't know why. But like when I'm measuring this or the almond flour, if I switched it to another bowl, like the bowl I would use to mix all the dry ingredients together, it would say it was 150 instead of maybe like 145, or it would say it was lower than what it was supposed to be. And so that spent like 30 minutes just trying to figure all that out. And in the end, I decided just to scoop in the flour by the cups and measure it off, and then just do it all together instead of doing all that nonsense, because I still was like, do I sift it before I do the food scale, or do I do the food scale and then sift it? Like, it was, yeah. So another thing that could have gone wrong is the egg whites. So I did use a food scale for this, and usually I just do 3 egg whites, but this I had to use like maybe 3 1/4 or 3 1/2 egg whites. So it was generally kind of 4 eggs used for this. Another thing is, everything I did kind of do the same with like measuring like the sugar and the salt and all other things that was needed, but like the whipping of the eggs, I think like I thought it was maybe too flimsy of the stiff peaks, even though it was staying over my head, because you know when it's like too flimsy, when the peak is falling over, that you should still whip it, but sometimes it might still be okay. And I think I might have I over whipped it because of how much I kept going back and forth, because I didn't really know for sure. For some reason, I don't really know, because maybe the difference between the eggs and the sugar could have actually affected this, but it could have also just been under whipped as well. But I had been whipping for a long time. So for most of my recipes, I don't use a food scale, but some of them have had like the grams as the first option, like my red velvet cupcakes, which I recently tried. And for some things where I've tried it with the food scale and it's worked, or even worked a little bit better, I probably will use a food scale. But with some of my recipes, they don't have like that option. Like my cupcakes for vanilla and chocolate, I was given that recipe and just given in cups, so I don't really know where that could be as in grams. And some of my other recipes, it's just worked well in cups, so I don't really have to worry about it not working in grams. I would just say things I made multiple times in cups that I know have worked, I probably wouldn't really do in grams just in case, because again, some stuff like this, sometimes it could go differently or go wrong. With this, it's more of an elaborate thing, so anything could have ruined it. It could have been the egg whites, it could have been the mixing of the macaron stage, it could have been just anything, even the oven temperature. It could have been any of those things that could have made it all go wonky, even without the food scale. But I would say that's where more the struggle started to come. It took a long time. So this is where I add in the vanilla, and then I also used gel food coloring because I now had that, and I actually realized that gel works better than liquid, which is what I used to have. And I don't think this made too much of a difference because it was generally all the same. Like with that, just adding the vanilla and adding just coloring. But it did turn out a really pretty color. Let me just say, in the end, they looked amazing. Like the macarons look really great. Thank you God for at least the presentation. Like I could still take good pictures with them, but it just, the texture, everything was off, which you'll see later on. So this is generally what it looked like after being whipped. So basically in the macarons portion, this is where you basically will whip the dry ingredients with the wet or the egg white ingredients. And this is where your hand can get really tired. But this isn't fast motion, but I just kind of used the different techniques that I knew and just try to mix it as best as I could. And I decided to let's see what it's like to make a real figure eight, because when I've made it before, I never really got a full figure eight, but it always worked out in the end. And even with this, like it ended up being more soupy or gloopy in a way where it was really messy. Like if I just held the piping bag up, the little the macaron would fall out a little bit, not like super much because it didn't spread, but it just was more soupier, I guess, or wet, if that makes sense. But I just tried to pop as many air bubbles. I didn't really know when or when not it was ready, because like it could make figure eights was like this could be better, or like it's not all the way, or I don't really know. But yeah. So as you see, I actually could have stopped here. I don't know why I didn't, but like, because I don't even know why I didn't stop here. It just didn't look full to me. But there was still a little bit almond flour and the powdered sugar left in the bowl that I had put the almond flour from. And so I just mixed that a little bit more. But I really could have been done with this. Like, I'm scraping the bowls right now, but I could have been done at like before I did the extra 5 little turns of the macarons or macaron batter, whatever it's called. Here's where I add the last little bit, and like as I'm mixing this is in normal speed. I'm mixing it as if I'm making batter for like cupcakes or who knows what I'm doing. It's just really fast and kind of a lot. So this is where the actual piping happens. I have that little napkin right there because it was very drippy. It generally did work. Whenever I try to do that really fast flick thing, it doesn't work. So I just do the little peaks, and it does end up disappearing. So that's good. But anyways, it was very kind of hard to do. The next thing that could have been a fail is that I used silicone mats and also new baking trays. These are new baking trays that I just got like 2 weeks ago or some time ago, and I haven't really used it for a lot of stuff, but it's good for pictures and things. But I baked with those, as well as I have these silicone mats that they don't really fit with any tray that I have. Like all the trays, like it's like very big on the tray, or it's like maybe too small for the tray. It doesn't fit on any of them. But anyways, that could have been some sort of problem using the silicone mat as well as the new baking trays. The baking trays are kind of dark, but like the old trays I have, they're kind of dark just because they're old, but these are naturally like dark gray steel, kind of like that. So the thing is, for me, I usually use parchment paper, and even the recipe that I got, she used parchment paper. But I got these silicone mats just because it's reusable and I don't have to run out of so much parchment paper like for macarons, and it has the actual shapes on there, so that I can try to get them as close to the same size as I can, which generally they were, but like there were a few like they were a little bit not not how they were supposed to be. I did try to make heart shapes, but it didn't work with how this consistency was. But yeah, I thought I recorded that. But here's what they look like with sprinkles. I did add some sprinkles on them just to give it more flair. So I may have let them rest for too long, because either some of them were still wet, so maybe this consistency made it kind of more harder, or it just sat for a really long time, like I should just put it in the oven right when I thought I would. But another thing is that in this oven, which is 325, they rose up pretty quick. And I was like, maybe it's the trays, or maybe that's just how it's supposed to be, because I forgot what the other ones were like last time. But like after 2 minutes, they already like were like rising up like quick. And as I took them out of the oven too, like they were like deflated, and it like there was a little bit of feet, but like you couldn't really like see it. It was a really thin line, like how some people's may be, but it was just no. I remember putting down the heat just in case, because they were like that. They were already rising like that. So I thought, let me put it down to 320 or 315, because sometimes your oven might just be hotter than what it says it is. Another thing, I opened the oven to adjust the smaller pan because it was just kind of like not fitting correctly. So that could have been another thing, but let me just say, again, they were rising a lot. They were kind of off, like these were like underbaked, and it was just like underbaked in the way where it was like completely underbaked. Sometimes mine like might not have like the exact clean hard shell you get at the bottom. So I was like, why is this happening? Maybe let me just put it back in. And I had to keep doing that for like 30 minutes plus maybe. Like it even got brown a little bit. Not like brown, but a little bit brown. And it's like, I forgot that like for things like this, if you keep putting it back in the oven, it's going to get like hard. Because like, you know, if you overbake something, it gets dry or crunchy or hard or who knows what. But again, it was just like completely all underbaked, where like some of them could get off of the silicone mat, but like most of them weren't, and were just sticking to it. And usually, like I said, mine are soft, so it's not completely like have a hard bottom shell like most people's do, and it's still like soft and chewy, but not underbaked, if you know what I mean. So here's where I'm filling them. There's a lot that are messy. I basically have this dyed yellow because I was trying to make it more whiter with adding some purple, but then I made it too dark, so I added some yellow, but then I made it brown, and then it was just really weird color, and I got it back to yellow though. So again, I tried it like with and without salt, because this person that I have, again, like my instructor that helped me, she adds like I feel like she adds salt to hers, or it's just like in a way where it's not like it's sweet, but then like you can also get this salt flavor. So I'm like, she probably adds salt a little bit on top of it or somewhere in it, and it tastes really good. It makes it actually have that nice little salty flavor to all that sweetness. So I just added some salt to those and sprinkled it on. So I did take a bite out of one, and I think that one was like chewy and like typically how it usually is. But some of them, they kind of got cracked, and as you can see, some of the shells broke off of some, and like even the bottom isn't even all the way, but like it was like hard enough, if you know what I mean. But after filling them, I remember testing some of them, because some of them like were really hard and crunchy. So I tested the other ones, and majority of them were really hard, crunchy, and like you couldn't even really eat it. It wouldn't be good to the mouth. It wouldn't taste right, and the texture would be off. So overall, there was like maybe 5 that were still chewy and soft. I generally just ate all of them because I remember eating them, or maybe I like tried a bite of it, because I had to taste test a lot, because like some of them were crunchy, some of them were hard, or I was just taste testing to see what does it taste like when I first took it out of the oven. Overall, I'm just going to keep everything the same. Like I said, for some recipes, I might use a food scale. For some recipes, I will use the same thing that I always do. I know now not to change the way I do macarons anymore, and hopefully the next time I make it, it works out. But I probably won't add it to my business right away, just because with things like these, it could easily mess up in any way, and you just don't really want that to happen on an order. Thank you all so much for watching. If you have any questions, tips, or anything you want me to bake in the future, feel free to comment down below, and have a blessed week.